and faithful to the king and to the whole concept of British colonization. And also the First Nations who were there were a lot of promises, and a lot of promises continue to be broken. But they were there also for the same reason, as well as the blacks. The Black Brigade was crucial to most of the major victories in Upper Canada at this point. The thing that Jenny mentioned when we're putting all these names together is that you have to remember there are only 700 people in Toronto. And we've been doing an education program with Luminato where this idea of the tents, we're working with 5th, 6th, and 7th graders where they're going to be creating 200 tents as well. Small miniatures, a little tent that I designed that's made out of cardboard and balsa wood. And there's going to be a little light inside, but they're not going to be building something like this. They're going to be taking situations from history of that particular period of time and then finding a contemporary relation and building a bit of a collage on the exterior of the tent.
Yeah, they're specifically doing a relation to site. So they'll be looking at the stories, but specifically looking at a site, their downtown schools, and what was there before. So how things have changed. So it's a video collage of past and present, kind of on the outside of the tent.
And they'll be set up, I think, somewhere in David Pico Square during the festival, so you'll get a chance to see them. So, anyway, going back to...
I can talk about the installations if you want.
Yeah, I just wanted, before you do that, I wanted to just mention one thing about... the one thing that fascinates me and Jenny is the idea of zeitgeist. And if you're familiar with that term, and I don't even know if I ever pronounce it right most of the time, but what it is the energy of a society. It's that I was explaining it to students today at Ryerson. I said, you know, when you go to New York City, you get this energy. You know, everyone's, oh, New York City's so great. It's just filled with this energy, and you come out and you feel either revivified or you've been scared to hell. And you go to Paris. You go, oh, Paris has got this thing, and that particular energy is something that is identifiable to a city, and it's also identifiable to Canada. Because more now than ever, people will come up to Toronto and go, you know, there's something about Toronto that's really different. You know, it looks the same. It looks like it could be Chicago or it could be something else, but it's not. It's got this other energy. So what we're trying to do with this, by putting all these stories together and having real people work on these stories and find a clear relationship to them, is that when people come to the encampment each evening, they will get a sensation of what might have been the zeitgeist at that particular time in 1812. What was the feeling? Because each tent is a story. Each tent is a drama. And ultimately you have 200 dramas that will be contained within Fort York like a temporal village. And then the public comes. And normally, just to tell you, when we've done it before, over the course of every evening, anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people come through the encampment each night. So you have this en masse of 500 to 700 people moving around the tents, and then they'll go into a tent, and they'll experience something, and they'll come out and they'll go, oh, you got to go in that one. And then all these other dialogues begin between people that are naturally kind of, the tents become a catalyst for the public to actually talk about things. And that's where the work really gets interesting. It's interesting now because we're working with our creative collaborators, but talk about...
Well, I think I'll just expand on that a little bit, because I guess when we start talking about building connections, it's a lot of what we do with the public too. Like, we're just starting our work with the creative collaborators, but we've been really, really pushing to talk about dialogue. It's like all of these people, all of the stories, they were connected. We all live in the same city or close in the same region as they were. We're all connected, right? So let's start building the connections and making the connections visible so that everyone gets to know each other, everyone gets to know each other's interests, and we can begin to build an energy that way. So with our collaborative team, we begin to build an energy slowly. And that same energy is pulled out there as well in the work. So, and then talking about the installations.
Yeah.
So I guess the process that we move into, like with our creative collaborators, starting the building of connections and looking at the relationships of what might have been. we build installations. Can you put it back to the red one,
Yeah.
please? Thanks. There's just one I really like to talk about. Just a little bit about the creative process, so you can look at how we move from story into visual installations, because it's a process that's really, really, truly public. We invite people that are creative, people who are creative and artistic, like to do the work, but we've set up a process where it is truly public. Anybody who wants to do it can do it. Anyone who says, I want to do it and I'll commit to this process, is welcome in our project. It's why it's so diverse. There's children, I think the oldest person's probably close to 80.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, really diverse range of ages, groups, immigrants, old Canadians. Like, it's very, very beautiful to see kind of a whole range of what our city is come together. This one here I'd like to talk about. It's just very clearly sort of how we work with the stories. This one was about a writer who was quarantined on Roosevelt Island because he had malaria. Mm-hmm. And this particular artist in New York chose a few different elements of the story. The story was that he got malaria and died writing the novel. It was going to be the novel of his life, and died before it was finished. So she took those pieces, put the typewriter, like the tent is about like this. So she just put this at the back and put a light underneath. There's no technology. We encourage that there's no technology so that we can build a really, really soft, natural, organic feeling in the village that we build. But there can be light, small ones, if it's battery operated. So she chose to use red because of the blood connection with the mosquitoes. And as you opened the tent, you looked in and you saw this typewriter down low. His story was typed on this. And all of the stories, like little snippets, pieces of important moments of these people's life in 1812 will be included in the tents as well. So there will be some reference to what the story is, not completely abstract. So the story was written here, and as you moved down to read the story into the tent, you started to notice she had built all of these little tiny mosquitoes out of glass and wire. And they were really, really small, but because your eyes had to adjust to the different light, they just slowly became visible, and you realized that the entire tent was full of these mosquitoes. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a really, it was an experience that she was able to create inside the tents. And this is kind of where we work with our creative collaborators to build this sensation. Of this one, she was working to create this feeling of entrapment, because it was just this one mosquito that had kind of forced him to be stuck on this island. And then the color of blood, and she really tried to create what she thought he would have felt like. Right? It was an extension. No one knows what he felt like, but that was what her interpretation was. So that's kind of the process that we're beginning tomorrow. And if you're down at Fort York, we'll have, I think, 14 of our collaborators. We're just starting. It's the first day.
The one thing in addition to this, I'm just going to go back. Oh, you can see it. So what's interesting about the artwork is that tents are made out of canvas, and most painters work on canvas. Canvas has basically been the foundation of all visual art from the beginning of time. When canvas was stretched and they realized that it held the color, it worked perfectly, and it also works really well with light when you apply paint. What we've done here is we've taken the canvas and given it volume. You have to go inside the canvas to experience the work. So what you do, you're going in, as Jenny was describing with the typewriter, you're going in, but at the same time, what's interesting is that on the outside, because of the light on the inside, you're going to get shadows cast on the outside. So every tent begins during the day. It's completely anonymous because you can't see it during the daylight. The tents stand as clean, pure canvas that work with the sunlight that will go over it. And the tents remain tied up and closed during the day. In the evening, they're opened up. People can go in. But at one point, when I was talking earlier about the people moving around and talking and everything, the other thing is, as soon as you go into a tent, you're implicated into the artwork. Because your movement within the tent suddenly creates a kinetic relationship between the object, the light, the canvas, and the viewer on the outside. So you get this kind of shadow play by every single person who goes inside of the tent, which becomes a very interesting thing. It's like, you know, these, remember, I don't know these types of drapes, it's rare these days with the lighting we have, but I remember when I was a child, I used to love walking down the street because of the old lighting system, and people had these types of drapes, and you would see the shadows on them. And it was very spooky when you were a little kid. And but that's what begins to happen. So, and people who are unfamiliar with that are in that environment that is kind of old, but at the same time new, and it creates a little bit of a mystery or spookiness to the whole village that's going on, very ghostly, if you like. When we go, this is New York City, there's the Empire State Building, and that's the UN. It was really, I have to say, in New York, it was wonderful to get people. Oh, this was the other thing. Fort York, the people at Fort York and Luminato kept saying to us, you know, well, who's going to come down to Fort York?
This is true? Like years ago. It's like not any time.
No, but it's.
They didn't say that just recently.
But Luminato was worried about people coming.
Oh, everyone's
like not everyone's going to Fort York. How are we going to get everyone down to Fort York? And we said, look, in New York, do you know how difficult it is to get to Roosevelt Island? Like, you have to go over the Queensboro Bridge, into Queens, circle around, go over another bridge, and then back into Roosevelt Island. Then if you take the subway, it's about 50 stories down
under the water.
Close to hell.
It's completely terrifying.
Right? And then there's a tram that goes over. And then you saw the image of where the encampment was, then that was another kilometer walk that people had to do. And, you know, the guy who ran, sorry, I don't know why I'm whispering, but the guy who ran the island, because it's not part of Manhattan, it's kind of belongs to the state, so they appoint someone to take care of all the people on the island like it's some kind of institution.
It's because it was an institution. In
That's
1975, people started living there.
And he said, he came up to us, he's one of those ornery Americans. Anyway, he just said, what? And he just said, you're lucky if you're going to get 40 people out there every night. And when the opening night happened, because there was a big gate before you could go in, and it was part of Open House New York. That we were partnered with Open House New York. Lineups. Just lineups. And he came and just couldn't believe it, because they were having a little circus or carnival at the other end, and no one was going to that. And that was sponsored by the island, and then they came to us. I'm being fair.
You are.
I just wanted to say that what's interesting about the work also is that it will bring people to a destination that is like so rich in history that people will come there, and it will be the first time they've ever set foot on Fort York, and they're going to stand at that far end in the rendering. You'll see again, we're leaving two areas clear at either point for the two, and they can stand there and they can look at their city in a way they probably never looked at their city before, because they're going to be completely immersed in history, and they're going to be looking at the present at the same time. So there's a really nice clash of feelings that are going on in individuals.
It's already happened. I think like 80% of our collaborators have never been.
Yeah. And they're like kids.
Crazy.
They just walk around, jumping, going up the ramparts. You know. It's pretty hilarious, actually. So yeah, these we've kind of the other thing too that we
talk a little bit about how we choose the site. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of an important connection, I guess, like the whole spooky transportation here. It's actually part of the reason why we chose this site in particular, is because of the journey. And that's all, we feel part of it too. And at Fort York this time, they're closing the East Gate, so everyone is going to have to walk along the old water line before they come up and around. So there's kind of this really nice journey with Fort York too. And there's something about the archaeological dig and discovering what's inside of a place that isn't that well known. That's really, really interesting, because everybody's learning something new. That's all. It was really short.
That's cool. The other thing that we do is we try to have a numerical relationship with the tents. So in 2006, we had 68 that referred to the Mental Health Bill 68, which was very controversial. Then we did in New York, we did 100, because there It's the old smallpox hospital that was built, and there were only 100 beds. And we figured we would do something that was reverent to that particular piece of architecture. In Ottawa, we did 70 because under 70, if your IQ is under 70, you are considered intellectually disabled. And then for the bicentennial, it's obvious. And then we went from 70 up to 200. So kind of crazy, but very exciting at the same time. And that's the National Gallery. Ottawa was really beautiful, I have to say. Because when you were in the encampment, you would look and you would see the National Gallery, then you would turn away and you see the new American Embassy, then you would see Chateau Laurier, and then you would see, you know, Parliament buildings. And there's a great review on our website, if you're interested, on our media page, which is a fictional review of Stephen Harper meeting me on the grounds of the encampment, and me taking him for a little stroll. It's very funny. It's very funny. It's not condescending. It's just very, very well done. So there's Ottawa. Okay. So we also tried. This is one of my favorites because it was almost perfect. This particular grid there, and then here. You had Ottawa, so it was really, it was great. It was just, you know, as a Canadian, it was a pretty cool moment. Now Fort York. So this is a rendering.